it's been said that a monkey typing at random on a typewriter could eventually write the complete works of Shakespeare. Well, I once did this experiment with my then 11-month-old daughter, Juliet, and this is what she typed. I let her go for a bit, and so on and so on. And I realized after a bit that I'd have to let her go on for at least 1 billion years before she got even a single phrase of Shakespeare. The eminent astronomer, Sir Fred Hoyle, has pointed out that it's just about as unlikely that any complex living structure could spring into existence suddenly by luck alone. He said it's rather like taking a junkyard and letting a hurricane blow through it, and the hurricane has the luck to spontaneously assemble a Boeing 747. So here's our junkyard, and the hurricane comes along, and it blows like this. And Hoyle's point is that the luck that would be necessary to spontaneously assemble a Boeing 747 like that is equivalent to the luck that you would need in order to get something like an eye or a stick insect or a hemoglobin molecule by sheer luck. Well, my reason for mentioning Hoyle's 747 is that I'm going to take his name in vain in the next demonstration. We're going to have a computer monkey, or rather, we're going to have 2 computer monkeys, one called Hoyle and one called Darwin. Both monkeys have the same task. Both have to type not the complete works of Shakespeare, but one phrase from As You Like It, more giddy in my desires than a monkey. Hoyle types entirely at random. After every line that he types, the computer checks to see if he has managed to hit the target line. If he does, the computer will stop, bells will ring, it'll be the most improbable coincidence in the history of the world, and I solemnly promise to eat my hat. I'll go further than that. I bet you everything I possess that it won't reach the phrase. Shall we say in the next 10 billion years. I won't bet you. I'll undertake to give everything I possess to the Royal Institution, and here's a legal document signed by me which undertakes to make over everything I own to the Royal Institution in the event that the monkey Hoyle reaches the target phrase. But of course, this is just to illustrate my confidence that chance on its own could never make an eye or a 747. The real point of the demonstration is that the other monkey, Darwin, will get the target phrase. So what does Darwin do? The same, but with a crucial difference. The Darwin monkey begins by typing a random phrase. So far it's the same as the Hoyle monkey. But now the computer breeds from that phrase. It breeds 50 offspring, which are identical to the first phrase, but with a tiny mutation, a tiny random difference in each of the 50 cases. The computer then looks at those 50 offspring and chooses the one which most resembles the target phrase, however slightly it resembles the target phrase. So the generations go by, and after generation after generation, it gradually becomes more and more like the target phrase. Now, when I agreed to give these lectures, I was told that I should always call members of the audience out to assist, but I was also told that it was silly to do this if all I was going to ask them to do was to come out and hit the return button on a computer. However, on this particular occasion, since so much is at stake, I thought it would be better if I did ask somebody who knows a lot about computers and is very good at pressing buttons to come out and perform this onerous task. So, would anybody like to volunteer to... Yes, right, you there. Now, what's your name? Andrew. Well, you understand what's at stake, Andrew, do you? Okay. Here's the target phrase, more giddy in my desires than a monkey. There's the box where the Hoyle monkey is going to type, and there's the box where the Darwin monkey is going to type. And unless Bryson's been messing around with the program in order to deprive me of my worldly goods, that's the way it's going to be. So, are you ready? Go. Now you see the Hoyle monkey typing away entirely at random. The Darwin monkey is down here. And I think we can begin to see something appearing in the Darwin row. More if giddy in my desires than... Bang, and it's got there. How long did that take? Anybody time it? Not very long, I think. Anyway, thank you very much.
Impart a secret. I published my first paper that dealt directly or indirectly with Darwinian evolution in 1973, a long time ago. And I published it directly because I had been thinking about topics in automata theory, machine theory, and I was very much influenced by mathematical linguistics. My great buddy Marco Schutzenberger was a mathematician, and Noam Chomsky and Schutzenberger were working together on the description of natural languages by a formal mathematical method. And I tried to apply exactly the same description of certain structures in the English grammar to what I then, in 1973, understood about molecular biological systems. And what did I discover? That it was impossible, not just difficult, but impossible to use the simplest level of explanation, so-called finite state automata, where one thing happens after another. Typical Darwinian progression, small incremental continuous improvements in the structure of an organism. As soon as you tried to specify that very rigorously, you discovered, well, it doesn't work. It doesn't look good. It doesn't make sense. What you need is at least, and this was 1973, all this is far in the past now, and I'm sure the methods have been improved, but I think the conclusion is sound. You need at least what's called a push-down storage automata. You need some forward-looking memory. Let me give you a simple example. You take the English sentence. The old man came. And you can say that sentence is made by first fishing the word "the" from a vat. And that word determines the next one. It can be old, sprightly, courteous, ancient, whatever. But it determines the next word. And then the third word, man, is determined by the second word, and the verb at the end is determined by the third word. Very simple system. It's a very Darwinian system. You can imagine Darwinian evolution producing the sentence, the old man came. Turns out English doesn't work that way, and no other natural language does either. For example, the old man who had snorted the roses in the hall came. Now listen to the balance of that sentence. The old man, comma, who had snorted the roses in the hall, comma, came. There is no immediate dependence. When you get to the verb, you have to go all the way back to the beginning of the sentence and keep that in memory before you'll understand what the sentence says. That can't be produced by a Darwinian mechanism or a finite state automata. And the great work in this field was done by Noam Chomsky as early as 1958 or 59. It was a revolution in graduate school when I was there. Just amazing. And contrary to what all the behavioral psychologists thought, and behaviorism in psychology is simply Darwinism in psychology. Contrary to what all the people like B.F. Skinner thought, or W.V. Quine, a great philosopher, English and no other natural language behaves in this way. You need something like a push-down storage automata for a formal description. And of course, that set my imagination on fire. You had your experience, yeah. I had mine, and I got together with a very good biochemist, George Pechenik, and we were going to publish revolutionary papers, and nothing ever happened.
Ruin your careers in so doing, yeah.
Oh, Pechenik went on to a great career, but he didn't go on to a great career criticizing Darwin, that's for sure. He's some bigwig in an oil company. Oh, amazing, an oil company.
Yeah. I'm intrigued by this phrase, forward-looking memory, because one of the things that the mechanism of natural selection can't do by definition
absolutely impossible.
is have foresight. And yet every simulation that's done in a computer of Darwinian evolution seems to require that foresight. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
It is assiduously packed into the simulation itself. I mean, I think we can say as a kind of general principle where Darwinian computer theoretic simulations work, they're not Darwinian. And when they don't work, what they require is the addition of forward-looking memory, some capacity to store information about the future. This is simply missing from Darwinian theory. It's absent a concept. There's a hole where there should be something substantial. And it's not a trivial hole. It's a very significant hole.
Richard Dawkins, I think the two of you have debated in the past, but he has a simulation where he attempts to do this, where he wants the computer to produce the phrase, "me thinks it's like a weasel," but tell us.
I wrote about this before Dawkins published his stuff, and you know, many people were arguing like Dawkins. Dawkins has become the most well-known, indeed notorious. He took a phrase from Hamlet. He thinks it's like a weasel, and he said, "How would?" It's an ironic phrase for Richard Dawkins to use. God punishes every man according to a special plan. And he said, what would be required in order to achieve this sentence from a random group of letters or words using just Darwinian principles? And he said, well, suppose we set up a computer and we randomly varied a sample sentence, which was just gibberish. And every time we accidentally came close to the sentence, the target sentence, methinks it's like a weasel, we would keep those changes and allow the computer simulation to go on until we converged to the target sentence itself. And of course he was able to show with no very great difficulty that indeed using those constraints you could achieve convergence to a target sentence much more quickly than you could by looking at it randomly. I never understood what he was up to.
What's the fallacy in that, though?
I'm not sure it's a fallacy, because obviously his theory is correct. It's simply not Darwinian, because what he has, speaking technically, is a built-in metric, which is just a way of measuring the distance between what he gets randomly and what he needs to get. And speaking informally, he has a fixed goal in mind. Now, not necessarily the goal of that sentence, but if you disregard that goal and say, well, any English sentence will do, the problem becomes progressively more difficult, not less difficult. Because then you have to build in constraints which will tell you when you've reached an English sentence and when not, and no one knows how to do that.
So he's selecting for future function, not actual function. There's no actual
right.
function being selected. He's selecting
it's all taking place in the future.
In the future.
In the future.
As if the computer somehow knows, which of course natural selection doesn't know.
No, but the rest of life does.
Yeah, the rest of life does, yeah. As one of our colleagues, Paul Nelson, says, if you get it wrong, life has a way of talking back. It says, hey, I needed that, I'm dead.
Exactly.
Well, there's a lot wrong with that as a demonstration of Darwinian natural selection. For one thing, it has a distant target in mind, which natural selection does not have.